Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to consume them? Did I just read what I... Did I hear what... Did I just hear what I read? Seriously, a particular Samaritan village did not welcome Jesus and his disciples. So that's what James and John asked, Lord, do you want us to call down fire, burn them up, destroy them, consume them? These are the disciples of Christ, but they make this horrific request as healing. So when people block you instead of, finishing out the conversation you had, that kind of produces anger. The gospel should disturb us. Jesus turned and rebuked his disciples for making such a request. His disciples had gotten so far off track of the message of the kingdom of God that he had to rebuke them for wanting to kill some Samaritans simply because they were lacking in hospitality. Kind of like not finishing your conversation. But why did the Samaritans refuse to welcome Jesus and his company? It may have been due to previous negative experiences with other Jewish pilgrims who passed through their village. Perhaps it was because James and John were not very kind to them. Yeah, as we've learned the other day, there's this hero narcissist where you want to save people, but you don't respect their boundary. But for whatever reason, Jesus and his band of followers were not welcome. Interestingly enough, in all these Gospels, there were Samaritans that called for Jesus' death. Many Samaritans did accept Jesus. Recall the Samaritan woman. What of Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan? Yet the disciples in Luke's Gospel had become rather possessive of Jesus. So that's kind of like our personal opinion of Jesus. What doctrines we've heard of him up till now. Possessive of the kingdom, and very judgmental in their view of who could be worthy of the kingdom of God, or even share in the ministry of Christ. So that's why we kind of want to make sure they share the same doctrine we have. Oh, we can hear the pride, the self-importance, the arrogance, the elitism, but the kingdom of God is not really or ethnically spiritually or ethnically or nationally elite. In our own day, we are bombarded and consumed daily by those who seek justice for themselves, against others. For others, their call for justice is often a hidden desire for revenge. Others openly admit that they do not want justice but revenge. Some even pray that God should destroy others. But who are we to judge others as unworthy of God's love? So who are the Samaritans in our midst that we judge as unworthy of Christ's love and our love? Well, no one's really unworthy, but sometimes Lordship Salvationists, when they call Jesus a liar, can produce anger. Sometimes when they say you can only be saved through a certain there's a lot of things that where we want to have control, but we just don't. Oh, we may not say it that way, but our demeanor towards certain others makes it up his steps of our church, but is often ignored because he's not one of the beautiful people. What about the chronicler or the underemployed? What of the teenagers or young adults of the aged who are just waiting to be asked to do something? They look at others or talk about others. And though we may not ask the Lord to nuke others out of existence, how easily do we sometimes render others invisible? I've had people tell me they feel invisible in many ways and our stop coming to Mass. No one called to check on us, but they did call when they wanted money. real or imagined. These are genuine hurts. Many people are concerned the self for the kindness, the sorrowful, the hungry craving for belonging. The hungry craving for belonging. The hungry craving for belonging. The unwelcome longing for an the poor seeking comfort. All of these can likely find right here in our midst in these very pews today. They are not just out there in some nebulous mass of humanity. We touch one another here in a unique way. And we have the opportunity for the better through our daily prayer and through our daily acts of charity. So who are the Samaritans God is calling us to embrace? You know, your neighbor as you love yourself is not just a nice Christian catchphrase. Social justice might begin here before we go out there. Anytime when we fail to recognize the person, we run the risk of being tempted to call down the fire from heaven to consume them. Anytime, then, when we fail to recognize the dignity of each human person. So, do we fail to recognize the dignity of people when they have a different faith, a different religious background, a subset, a denominational difference? Are we seeing the dignity of the person, or are we seeing an error we need to correct? Are we waiting for them to ask us what is that error, or are we trying to overstep their boundary? So anytime when we fail to recognize the dignity of each human person, we run the risk of being tempted to call down fire from heaven to consume them. But we cannot live our lives according to the flesh, as St. Paul reminds us. It's not about our designers' clothes or social status, our cars, homes, or even our well-tamed flesh. We are called to live by the Spirit in freedom. And then once we catch fire with Christ's passion, we won't want to consume others with our prejudice, and we won't have time to make excuses for delay in our response to Christ and our neighbor. But we cast caution to the wind, freely take up our cross, allowing ourselves to be consumed in the fire of God's love, burning bright, set free to love, to heal, to secure justice for all oppressed.